Welcome back to Night School 2026, talking about Don Juan Canto 2, back with Jesuit educator Daniel Babcock and public school educator, as well as podcaster Wes Shantz. I am your Dante scholar out of water here, talking about a 19th century romantic instead of a 14th century Italian. But this is a good reprieve from having to turn in my dissertation and then defend it in 5 days.
Mm.
And so this is what we nerdy few do for relaxation for leisure. When we leave the school, this is our true Swola. Apologies for the preamble, but most of you are probably new from the metrics, and so it's good to meet you. And if those of you who are regular listeners, thanks for putting up with that. Gentlemen, what'd you think about this text? I have lots of notes here, and there were lots of interesting parts and lots of references to other epics, including the Odyssey, but not excluded to the Odyssey and Don Quixote and Dante's
Dante.
Divine Comedy, which will come up again in a numerologically interesting moment in Canto 3, paragraph 11, like the Hindeca syllables
Mm.
of
Isn't he?
Dante.
Isn't Ugolino in Canto 2
He's in
also?
two, yes, but
Yeah, yeah,
Dante
yeah.
himself and his ultimate conception of Beatrice,
Oh yes, yes, yes,
Lord
yes, yes,
Byron
yes,
gets
yeah, of
into it.
course.
I'm actually probably going to include this stanza in my fifth chapter of my dissertation. We don't need to look at that now because there's so much in two.
Yeah.
Um, but I am looking forward to getting into that in three, perhaps after I've turned in the dissertation, perhaps the day of, perhaps the day before. But that said, so we've been texting a little bit about this canto. It is extremely long, like the first one, but then experiences a huge drop off in the next cantos. And given the body subject matter and the fact that we're no longer with Nabokov, so I feel that we're rather liberated now when it comes to theme and language. It seems almost post-coital. These first two chapters have featured at least two big time relationships, one seeming to be consummated here in a Nausicaa and Odysseus sort of fantasy way. Um, uh, and so one wonders if Lord Byron, as a good romantic, as a satirist, is going to lose steam. And a little bit of pre-evidence in this, and I'm going to keep talking about Canto 3 before we actually talk about 2, is the very first line of it. When he invokes the muse, etc. It just kind of leaves off right after that. Doesn't have the energy for it. Has become listless. So we are now in the energy, in the act, in flagrante delicto. So this might be the best canto, the best chapter, the best segment of this entire work. So maybe not. But what did you gentlemen think?
I think I have heard of this section of this poem before, and I don't know if I've actually read it or it was just like something we might have covered in a romanticism course that I took back in college. But some of this sounded a little more familiar to me,
Hmm.
and I think I agree that this was kind of like sensational in the time it came out, and it still remains pretty remarkable, even 150 plus years later. Going on 200, right? And and so the specific timeline is a little unclear to me. I didn't look this up, but the event around that time that captured a lot of people's imagination is the shipwreck of the Medusa. And there's a very famous painting of it, the Raft of the Medusa, like great painting. And I think this makes an appearance in the Watchmen comic as well. So the
Oh
pop
yeah,
cultural
good,
reference
good,
to that
good,
one.
good. Yeah,
And
good.
so
Yeah, that's where.
I don't know if this was exactly at the same time he was tapped.
Um, that okay. The but that he are we okay to keep going?
Yes, please.
Oh,
Nothing
oh,
speaks professionalism like getting booted off by the internet.
oh. Okay. The original point being that he's trying to, of course, just kind of tell this tale reflecting on his own life of, you know, sexual profligacy, but also to criticize this older generation of poets in Wordsworth and Coleridge and this guy Southey. Um, for basically abandoning their radical ideals and becoming conservative, becoming reactionary in their old age, which is the thing that most people do. Um,
But not a good
but
romantic. That's
right, and so I'm wondering if that's an element of the cannibalism, if there's something going on there, right, with the kind of leitmotif of this cannibalism going on of trying to like eat the younger crew. But I don't know. I'm hearing a lot of Pope. Uh, you know, he doesn't have the heroic couplet that Pope has throughout. He ends each little stanza with heroic couplets, but there's a lightness with a seriousness underneath it that gives me Alexander Pope like Rape of the Lock, Dunkiad, even just his regular lyric poetry that I pick up on. But yeah, it's a wild story, and his allusions are well woven in. Um, yeah.
well, look at this guest from
Whoa.
well, that was unplanned and interesting, and many people do have access to this Zoom space now because there are a lot of seminars that we have. But I think I will owe Justin a call after this because we have something else to talk about, though it will be unrecorded, just to add to the mystery. I got kicked off by the internet for a minute, but prior to that, we were talking a little bit about real shipwrecks, and also I heard your bit on romanticism and giving and sort of the death of the ideal by becoming a conservative, and how
Mhm.
Lord Byron may be expressing his disappointment in his friends and their betrayal of his ideals. And so you were connecting that to cannibalism. Count Ugolino, who's mentioned explicitly here, is in the lowest circle of hell, circle 9, which is itself split into 4 subcircles, various sorts of betrayals against family members, rightful lords, house guests, and then, of course, God as well. Count Ugolino is chewing on the head of somebody known as Archbishop Ruggieri. This image itself is taken from the death of Diomedes' father, who, in the battle at Thebes, the 7 against Thebes, he was one of those. Titius. No, 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 no. Diomedes' father's name is escaping me for the moment, but I will. No, it is Titius, son of Titius. In dying, as he's dying, he's so valorous that Athena is flies towards him to give him immortality, but he's so upset at the caliber of person who has struck him fatally that he starts to gnaw on his skull. And Athena is so aghast, mortified by this action that she leaves him to die. And so Count Ruggieri is being and so Ugolino has been betrayed by Ruggieri. And so the imagery of Ugolino does accord with your theory or your hypothesis that Don Juan is a criticism of, or a venue for being criticism of Lord Byron's fallen brethren who have become traitors to their ideals and allowed themselves very un-Peter Pan like, very unromantic like, to age, to grow old and to mature in what they want, and to become more conservative and preservative rather than creative. And so I think the image of being at sea, um, he is a very liberal, liberated, progressive image, right? Whether it be fighting new storms and anything that comes, one is untethered, one is going to new places and exploring. Ideally, this is like the ultimate idealistic, youthful, romantic thing to do, to adventure. But these individuals, well, they may be living in a totally different way. However, it is that Don Juan is modeling Lord Byron's ideas of what a conservative lifestyle is. But that all goes to say is that I missed a bunch of what you said, so I'm sorry I'm not interacting with more of the actual direct words.
No. That was
the sound.
Yeah, that was good. I mean, as you're speaking, it's reminding me of certain images of like the okay, fatherhood as a motif or failed fatherhood is an interesting one that's going on here. We had this in Canto 1 with his own father essentially being a goof who just couldn't kind of like manage his family and had this affair and got right. Is that what happened? All of a sudden, I'm blanking on what happened to him.
Well, then he eventually dies. I
Yeah,
mean, he
he
kind of just like
fades,
dies. Yep.
right? So lacking a father, and then the character who there's two are there two characters on the ship with or the raft with them, the lifeboat, who are fathers, and both their sons die in sort of uh like tragically impotent ways. Like the one father like squeezes out a few drops of rain, and then the kid dies anyways. And I don't remember how the other one dies. And then once he lands, he gets in a place where there is this father, but he's too overbearing, such that he won't let his daughter, you know, form a relationship with Juan, and he sells him into slavery. So it's like this overprotective element. So we give this full spectrum of like not caring at all, caring too much, caring in the most tragic way, and yet there's none of the paths lead to any sort of, I don't know, goodness, production, safety. There's no model of a good father here. And so in a way, like, Byron's own father, I think he dies when he's young. I'm forgetting on the biography. But if Wordsworth and Coleridge are his literary fathers, artistic fathers, they've led him astray in one of these ways as well. Whereas Milton and Pope and Dryden have not.
That's interesting that how you put that in, especially because we have a model of a good father in front of us, and obviously you, as a Jesuit educator, deal with some good fathers as well. But the idea of the abnegation of the responsibility of the father and finding a different father is interesting because, of course, the story of being sold into slavery due to piracy is a real story from Cervantes' life and how he, from that battle, lost part of his hand, which he says is very unfair for the pseudonymous writer of the fake Don Quixote, the second part, unfairly criticizes him for. He's like, I'm a hero because of this. But he also includes a very robust tangential story about the meeting of a woman named Zoraida, who is a Muslim woman who is converted to Christianity and helps save and buy the freedom of these men. But a story that Cervantes, though that it itself would be an embellishment of his actual experience, does come from firsthand experience of having been a slave himself after losing a battle. And so, insofar as, again, fighting at the Battle of Lepanto, being sold into slavery, finding a way to be sold back. I think his family bought him back. You could buy slaves back basically all through history. Definitely in Achaean and Trojan times, you see this in epic, but also in the 17th century too. Money is, I mean, it makes sense, right? Given the concept that money would buy and one's freedom. In any case, the idea of the abnegation of these fathers have turned to conservatism. But what about Cervantes? What a swashbuckler. So I often call him a proto-modernist, but perhaps he's a proto-romantic to Don Juan as well. I mean, this is a Spanish hero right? Though he's made a little English in the pronunciation in order to fit it. This is set in Spain, so obviously one of the other clear predecessors to this, fathers of this, would have to be Don Quixote. Would have to be the great writer of that, Cid Hamete Benengeli. I joke, but Cervantes.
So
Oh, go ahead, Wes.
just on that topic of like, so what do we get when we combine this idea of the absence of the father, or the father figure, which has betrayed the ideal, and then we get this other element of the kind of uh, freedom from slavery, or being set free from prison, surviving the shipwreck, right? In a way, it seems like the one is um, the down payment on the other, almost, right? Like if we're going to get this wish fulfillment, which I think this totally is at the stage of Canto 2, at least, like things are going great for Don Juan by the end of the Canto, he has to go through a measure of suffering to get there, right? And so it seems like there's a kind of compensatory quality
Mm.
to the wish fulfillment, and a kind of like oblation, or offering or sacrifice has been made of like, well, we have to kill off some people, including perhaps the father, so that we can set him free to have this adventure, to have this kind of amazing, miraculous recovery. And he wakes up and sees the face of the beautiful woman, concerned for him and him alone. And so there's a real idyllic quality to that, but there's a real dark, element to it to get there. To your point, Babcock, about like, the humor and the lightness overlying some really deep and dark stuff. Some of Pope is there too, right? I think he's a poet that is probably not as widely read today as the romantics that follow him, but certainly had a ton of philosophical stuff that was in the form of poetry, and it's just sort of a formal thing that we don't really read that kind of stuff anymore, and consider it like serious. What totally was, Lucretius, right? Lucretius was there
Hmm.
way before.
Hmm.
Homer too, the sort of the ultimate poet philosopher.
Um, I'm just randomly looking at a couple of these lines, stanzas 209 and 210. I hate inconstancy, I loathe, detest, abhor, condemn, abjure the mortal made of such quicksilver clay that in the breast no permanent foundation can be laid. And I mean, it's like reiterating this notion of that motif of the inconstancy that the lack of a father would create. This feeling of like, I don't have any foundation to build anything on without this person in my life or this model in my life to aim at. And so if I don't have, again, a physical present father, I need to look into art for that. And he's clearly found one, like you just mentioned, in Pope. I think in Milton he mentions, but obviously in Homer, in Dante, in Cervantes. Um,
Shakespeare's mentioned here too, directly,
yeah,
sweets to the sweet.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Then philosophy and Plato as well.
So then I wonder if that's like he doesn't really express, um, he portrays the fathers in Juan's life as being, I don't even want to say bad examples. Like the two fathers on the boat, I think they're good examples. It's just it doesn't work because they're destined to die.
Mm.
But what's that? How's your old English, Alex, the philologist? Feige and unfeige. Do you know those terms? One
No,
is
I would have
fated.
to look those up.
One is I do a little lesson with my students about this because transitioning into the weird sisters, right, of fate. But one is fated to die and one is not fated to die. But they're these words used in the original Beowulf. But anyways, um, uh, but the literary fathers are are always there. They're unchanging, except for the fact when they're still alive. So I wonder if that's part of what's going on with his anger towards Wordsworth and Coleridge. And I don't talk about Southey much because I don't know him well, but the other two, it's like he lived in a time when they had one idea and then they had a different idea, or from his perception. Like that might be that's a betrayal. Um, that might be what he's so strongly reacting to.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I agree entirely, or I have no disagreements with that, and I think part of the point that he's making too, and I think this has been somewhat problematized in the last several years, is the notion that as a poet and as an artist, he has many fathers, and he recognizes the greatness of, say, philosophy and Plato. That is itself looking for a sort of father, not accepting, say, a religious foundation or just how he naturally perceives the world, but looking into the principles and causes underlying the universe. But then also talking, yeah, giving his Homer and his or rather his Greek and his Roman literature, talking about Venus and Ceres and Dionysus as Bacchus. He and like you said, mentioning Milton, Shakespeare, and Pope. He is admitting, as I think any epic writer does, the existence of a canon, of a set of intellectual forefathers who expand one's thinking far beyond the bounds than one is naturally given in any geographic or linguistic setting. And is in some ways suggesting the necessity of having many fathers as a poet, as an artist, rather than simply a genealogical, father, and perhaps problematizing that notion in an almost religious way for the artist who serves a god too, Apollo. Um, that that actually the more important fathers are Homer and Virgil and Dante and Shakespeare to the poet than some remarkable biological father. Um, as or poet as poet. As a person, obviously one's father matters. Some more than others, Jesus, of course. But as a poet, as he's manifesting in this medium, in this epic genre, he doesn't seem, he seems to be accepting the conventions underlying the form rather than innovating on the form necessarily by means of changing the conventions. We've seen, like we talked about last time, we've seen some in medias res, some listing using of an epic form of meter and stanza length, and probably even syllables in the line if we wanted to count those for fun. But
It's
right.
iams, right? Yeah. I'm also interested that he doesn't seem to have much Chaucer, even though the mood feels Chaucerian, and Chaucer has I'm trying to think of which one is the story of Constance, who's get like shipped away by her father. Um, yeah, he doesn't explicitly mention Chaucer, but it feels Chaucerian. Um,
Well,
so
Chaucer, he's really concerned with relationships between men and women specifically in most of the tales. That's kind of what he's
yeah,
most into.
yeah,
Um, Probably to an extent also like the parental relationship, uh, but the kind of thing that we're seeing here between Juan and Heidi, the girl, right? Is what it recalls to me a lot is I think you said this in text too, maybe Alex, was the Nausicaa
hmm
Odysseus
hmm
kind of thing, right? And so we don't I was surprised that the canto ended before we saw the denouement of this little romance. That left me kind of on a cliffhanger. I was expecting this canto to fully play out whatever's going to happen between them. Um, but if I take that as my sort of paradigm for this, I'm pretty sure, well, and the Don Juan figure pretty much prohibits this from ending happily. It's at best they're going to part ways, amicably or something like that.
In his
Um,
head.
yeah, it's not going to go well. So, but
Uh,
it is. It does strike me that he talks about it in terms of they are wedded, right? They have
yeah.
Mm.
been married before the eyes of the witness of heaven, essentially, right? And the earth itself. And so this
Well,
is,
hmm.
yeah,
that
it's
that
interesting.
that is itself a reference back to Aeneid 4, where Dido and Aeneas sleep together, and there's a specific line that says, she calls him husband
Hmm.
Mm.
after that. And so like, yeah, it was the goddess of love, Venus, and marriage, Juno, who conspired against them. And so it was quite natural what happened. They end up making love in a cave during a hunt when they get separated from everybody due to a hailstorm. But right, so the idea, and that does increase the pathos that is to come, as happens in the Aeneid, right? There may be a difference in expectation or or of classification between the two, or perhaps because there's not a more formal institutional setting behind it, that word won't be, say, honored to the same degree that both parties would want. But I like that you mentioned the Nausicaa bit and the fact that we get the slightly more salacious version than that, though not quite as salacious as Nabokov would have it be, or not even close. But another Odyssey theme that I noticed, also island based and shipwreck based, similar to the Ugolino, was the Oxen of the Sun one, where they start to starve, where
Hmm.
they spend a month. And what's interesting is I've never thought of that as the holy oxen being perhaps human flesh, allegorically speaking, that they start to eat people, and that's the
Hmm.
step too far. That makes a lot more sense than some ox, then,
Hmm.
right? That's a real barrier that you cross to
Hmm.
become inhuman, and that's
Hmm.
Ugolino, that's Titius, um, as well. But they eat first dog, which is terrible because that's his dog,
Hmm.
and then he eats the shoulder and was like, man, it was good. Oh, and that's terrible. And I do know cultures that eat dog, and I intend to visit them, like like Vietnam and Southeast Asia, and it's listed. But that's not my dog. So to eat one's own dog, that's very Ugolino-esque. It's horrifying. It's like the opposite again of another Odyssey episode of seeing Argus. It's like
Hmm.
seeing him die and then eating him.
Hmm.
Um, After being on a dunghill, though, not recommended. But right. But then they move on to people.
Hmm.
And so, right, we talked about this a little bit philosophically, I guess, earlier, but what did you think about I mean, so is that Chaucerian eating the dog? Is that was what did
I would say the situation and the action. I mean that feels Chaucerian. Not every single tale, right? Yeah, it's pretty brutal and vivid, and like, but also treated with in a mediated way in a text that has kind of comedic lilt to it. Like this feels both tragic and comical at the same time, which is a little bit interesting. He's playing with mood there. Yeah, I think that is Chaucerian. I'm trying to remember which tale is the one with cuss. That's the one that reminds me of the most. It's a little more grotesque than Chaucer, I think, might be, but it's not far. Um,
what I think that also speaks to the point Wes was saying about there being moments of elation, but there also being an underlying sort of darkness going
mhm,
throughout, which I think maybe the adventure tale strives for, right? These
mhm,
extraordinary moments. Like now you're starving on an island and you're eating your own dog, and now you're eating a person who you knew. Um, and now you're betting some woman, but now the issue isn't necessarily thinking about your dead dog, but Julia and your first love and whether you forgot. And so like it's a very rich, full life. And
It,
it's yeah,
well, I was just gonna say picaresque as well, right?
yeah.
Which and the I didn't think about this, but the way you're describing it reminds me of a picaresque journey across Europe that has all kinds of crazy stuff happening. Is also Gravity's Rainbow, which is this is I've enjoyed reading this more than Gravity's Rainbow. Um, and it's just, I don't really have much to say about that, but it just makes me wonder about what is the project of the two texts such that one I enjoy and one I find self-serving and just not interesting. even though on paper it is,
That's a rough way to describe Don Juan. Just kidding. I know it's obviously Gravity's Rainbow you're talking about. Did we
I
record
mean,
those talks? We should have. We didn't.
I don't think we did.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh
yeah,
wow. They missed out on
yeah.
being
That one
really
in
hit like a book.
our diatribes against War and Peace also, like, I really wish we had those on record. That would have been
Well, maybe we'll have to go back to War and Peace someday. Yeah, I say that uh somewhat jokingly. Okay, well, so gentlemen, I think we're getting sort of near the end of our time here. Though I guess we had a big lead up too, but what are some of the final things that you would like to leave us with? A quote or a topic that we haven't gotten into, or something that you expect from the future? Or I don't know if you've been doing some secondary reading. I know that obviously Babcock, you are teaching a unit on romanticism now, so I don't know if you want to bring any connections in from that.
I'm on the earlier section, so we're still working through Blake. And I don't really see much connection between Byron and Blake personally. Um, I'm happy to be wrong about that, but once I get a little bit deeper, well, actually, I'm starting Wordsworth tomorrow or Monday, depending on how much time I have in class tomorrow. But yeah, I can have. I think I'll have more to say in a week or so on that front.
Um, let's see. I think that I mean, we haven't talked much about the situation in Haiti herself and her servant
Oh, what's her
Zoe.
name?
Zoe,
Zoe.
So,
right? Um, they yeah, they're living in a cave. Um, her father is this kind of pirate king of some kind. Um, so yeah, not a great father figure. Uh, but again, it does seem like a kind of idyllic setting for her at least. I mean, it's almost a kind of fairy tale um, in that she's completely removed from society. I mean, the play of Shakespeare that it's really similar to in my mind is
Tempest.
the Tempest. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
you got
Good.
the the girl who's basically meeting a boy for the first time.
Yeah.
Um,
I can't believe
and
I didn't. That's brilliant. Yeah, of course.
so I don't know. I think this is where I guess this section, yeah, it really doesn't fit in with the first canto in any regard, right? Um, except insofar as the lady and her servant are it seems completely devoted to Juin, um, in spite of all other responsibilities, loyalties that they might have. And so this is the element of the Don Juan, myth that is carried over and
Hmm.
that is consistent here. It's like he has this kind of charisma or power or whatever you want to call it that just magnetizes and people fall in love with him. Um, yeah, and so uh, to his joy in this moment and to his sorrow longer term, right? Because every single one
Hmm.
is
It's gonna
fleeting
break his
and
heart. Yeah,
gonna go
exactly
away.
right. Yeah, yeah. And even though there's this line about like eternal, he loves love because unlike people, love is eternal. And it's
Mm,
like, well, you need to have a person for it to be eternal, my man.
mm, mm.
But or for it to be real rather, not eternal. The other thing I was thinking about is that Coleridge has Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is also about a man who's lost at sea and all of his shipmates die. Different content, like they don't die, they don't suffer cannibalism. Um, there's much more in the metaphysics of that work, but I was thinking about that um, when we're reading that section. But then, yeah, Wes, the idea about the Tempest is interesting. That's interesting.
nursing
I
back to health, falling in love. I feel like that's a very modern theme too. Though I can't at the moment
Oh, there's
pinpoint.
lots. I can think of contemporary films
I,
like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, and I can think of negative renditions of that, like Misery by Stephen King.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of predecessors, and I'm going to have to spend a little time thinking of that. I mean, Dido to some extent,
Yeah, I was thinking Aeneas and
and
Dido.
Nausicaa too.
Nausicaa, yeah.
With I mean, these are both gentlemen who are down on their luck. I guess Gulliver's Travels has some elements of this as well from Swift. But right, that does seem to be one of the great archetypes of like nursing the English patient, nursing someone back to health and falling in love with them. Like the ultimate transference, basically.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah,
right.
but I can't think of many classical examples.
No, it does seem, yeah, no, I
I wonder if it's because it's a very male passive role. Like the woman is the hero, right? The woman is the agent of lust, of which turns into love.
You know, but
Yeah.
it does still put the focus of the agency on the man that she gets him back up to speed so that he can do his. I think if we were to look in the Arthurian romances, we would see a lot more of this. I
Mm.
think in those medieval chivalric romances, you get a lot
Mm.
more
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
into you get injured. Maybe even if we looked closely at Furioso at some
Okay.
point.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's good. This is Chaucer. This is the wife of Bath's Tale. The knight gets himself in trouble. He's raped the girl, and
Mm.
the old woman has to save him on the quest. And then also it. Oh man, it just left me. Before you said Arthurian, it made me think of. Oh man.
Not Sir Gawain.
No, 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 no. It was oh, War and Peace.
Hmm.
Both Andre and the
Yeah, yeah.
big dumb doofus. Both those
Pierre,
guys, Pierre.
Pierre.
They both had that, and didn't also what's the other guy? Nikolai, I think his name was. I don't remember all those characters. I didn't like any of them.
No, the one that I came closest to liking was the cut up with the sentimental streak for his mother and sister.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I
uh,
feel like that was a well, there's also, I mean, so there's yeah, okay. I might be mixing the archetype of the woman as the savior, like Raskolnikov with Sonia, um uh Mitya with Grushenka, right? So I might be mixing that symbol up with this idea, but it's
it's
yeah.
interesting that that could be different, right? Like the more Mary, like Beatrice, like savior of the soul, as opposed to someone
Yeah,
who nurses you
yeah.
back to health.
Yeah. Now, okay, what does he talk about? So, what does he talk about with Beatrice here, Alex? What is going on here with your stanza 11?
Oh well, I mean, we could talk more about well, so
If you want to save it, if you want to save it, you don't need to. I don't want to press you until you are published. If
no, 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 no. I'm happy to. Well, it's just this is kind of a he he's stepping into some heavy ground. So he says some this is Canto 3, paragraph 11. Some persons say that Dante meant theology by Beatrice and not a mistress. I, although my opinion may require apology, deem this a commentator's fantasy. Unless indeed it was from his own knowledge, he decided thus and showed good reason why. I think that Dante's more abstruse ecstatics meant to personify the mathematics. I think that's very intelligent. So just there's a major debate among allegorical readings of Dante, which started even during the first generation of commentators on him with his sons. Two of his sons wrote commentaries on him. And the first generation of what are called the ancient commentators is what did Dante mean by Virgil? What did Dante mean by Beatrice? This makes sense because a lot of medieval poetry is explicitly allegorical. And so in the context, a lot of allegory is heavy-handed, but he includes all this history and all this strange stuff. And so there's been robust debate since the 14th century about what Beatrice represents. This is something I'm writing on. I think I've got it down, but and I'll say what I think. I think it's the active intellect from the Aristotelian Arabic tradition, but this philosophical reading. but he is referencing here the perspective that the majority of Dante scholars have, which is that Beatrice represents theology, and that Dante moves from Virgil, who represents philosophy or rationalism, to theology, and that he actually stopped writing the Convivio after having a dalliance with philosophy after reading Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy, and then writing his first work, the Vita Nova, 1290, where he follows this lady philosophy, like Boethius's
Boethius.
philosophy. But then he turns away from philosophy by refusing to finish the Convivio and writing the Divine Comedy, which has a theological purpose. I think that's not correct, and also Lord Byron thinks that's incorrect here, because he thinks that Dante's more abstruse ecstatics meant to personify the mathematics. Mathematics is one of the speculative sciences, according to the Aristotelians. Natural science, which is physics, math, and metaphysics, are the three theoretical sciences. And so he seems to be arguing that there is a rationalism underlying Dante rather than an irrationalism, which I broadly agree with, though I have a lot more evidence than he does. But I'm happy to see that he put that forward, because that is not the common position. So he's putting forward a very uncommon thought by
Now
saying
he couches it in the previous stanza within the idea that like Dante and Milton were not inspired by their own spouses. That's not who they were talking about, that they represent something more.
well, there's perhaps his argument right there of mirroring his patristic lineage of saying that he needs so many male fathers, and so perhaps here
I also need maternal
inspiration
mothers.
for a poet.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
poet may need many ladies to
Many muses.
inspire.
Yeah.
Yes, many muses in the same way as like many sort of godfathers, as it were. And so this could be his argument for license. That, well, as a poet, you need the inspiration. And Venus, she pops up where she pops up, and I can see Venus as a poet and write about her here. And so, yeah, and this is Dante and Milton. Milton had to get divorced and wrote in favor of divorce. Dante got exiled from his wife and then wrote about this, 25-year-old who died for the rest of his life. And so an interesting, perhaps, justification for that. But yes, it is. We will have to look more specifically at the context and see what he's saying there. But out of context, it's very interesting what he may be saying in those 8 lines.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting argument for what he thinks Dante.
He mentions Laura a little above as well.
Petrarch. Very good.
Yeah.
So more divine women, or divinized women. Or as the Ye once Kanye says, would it amuse you to let me muse you, girl?
Talk about doggerel.
And I just pretty clever wordsmith in there, but he is.
I am not Kanye music wise is interesting. Kanye lyric wise is doggerel.
Yes, well, another creator who makes the Chaucerian argument for muses, as it were, but the Byronic argument. Well, so gentlemen, for next time, like I said, we have a pretty big drop off between size of or length of canti here. Let's say time way of saying cantos. I know you two know, but just for the listeners who aren't Italianists, we could do the same basic length of reading that we did this time if we wanted to cover 3. No, I think, yeah, no. Yeah, no, if I'm looking at this right, which I might not be, we're at, okay, yes, we're at 158. So it's about 30 pages to get to Canto 4, and then another 30 pages to get to Canto 5.
I read Canto 3. Did you read Canto 3, Wes, or no?
No.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, no. So I was happy to talk about 3, but I didn't think that we were talking about 3 this time.
Oh yeah, my bad.
It's okay because I missed a little bit of time being offline. Justin got on, and all sorts of craziness had happened this time. But okay, you've already read that. Well, I'd be happy to read. It'd be a little bit longer to read 3 and 4, but I think that would be.
I'm fine to read 3, 4, even 4 and 5 because the two of them are not very long either.
Right, that would make a natural break, it looks like, because
Yeah,
then there's a separate preface for the
Okay.
next three.
yeah. I
Okay.
mean, if you get yeah, if you guys are okay with it, we can go up to 5 just because
Up to
that's only through 5. That's only 70 pages for me, which I already just for this session I read. Let me just see here. I'm just gonna compare real quick.
that makes sense to me. I mean, that'll be a
I
nice.
read 80, so yeah, I could do that.
All right.
If you
Well,
guys are okay, that's fine with me.
yeah, I'm okay. I am always okay. This is the good stuff, Mr. Babcock. I'm just gonna make sure that I know. Maybe I'll send out a text after this. The algorithm will love all of this, but it
Yeah.
doesn't have agency over us. And I see that at the very end of Canto 5, we'll be treated to a quote from Twelfth Night.
Yes.
Here we go. All right, yeah, I
Okay.
gotta run. I'll see you guys.
Adios.